Happy Saturday, ladies and gentlemen. At least I hope it is a happy Saturday. Espionage DB7 here. And today I'm not coming to you as Espionage DB7. I'm coming to you as just simply Jesse. And I'm not coming on behalf of Odds and Ends Gaming. I'm actually recording this just as a personal message that I felt that I wanted to share. Obviously, this past week, or the past several weeks actually, have been a very turbulent and trying time, and it's been a very sobering experience for a lot of us. As of recently, of course, we've seen a lot of unrest and rioting and protests and just a whole lot of turmoil in our country, and I just wanted to comment on it a little bit. So the first thing I want to say is that I do hope that everyone out there is staying safe, both in the ways of when you go out, be sure that you're not getting mixed up in the bad things. It's one thing to protest. I wholeheartedly believe that protesting is one of the greatest freedoms that our country offers. The ability to make our voices heard, to march for change, and things of that nature. But there is a distinction between protesting and violence and rioting. And of course, I will never ever, say that violence is the answer to any question. So definitely keep yourself safe out there. And if you are, taking part in what's going on, keep yourself to peaceful acts. I think peaceful acts will resound. Even a peaceful act may not be as loud on the news, but I think it'll leave a more lasting impression and be remembered much more fondly. So definitely keep yourselves safe out there. Furthermore, also take care of yourselves with the pandemic that we are still gripped by in this country. Obviously, things are starting to open up again, which it's great. It's terrific. I'm glad that people are starting to get back to work, and hopefully at some point soon we'll start to see some normality come back into our lives. But it's never going to be quite exactly the same. I think we all have to kind of realize that, and we all have to kind of understand that normality is going to have a new definition in the weeks and months to come, and I think we all are going to have to come to grips with that. But I just wish I want everybody to be safe out there. I want everybody to take care. Steer clear of violence, steer clear of, doing anything harmful to others. This is a time when peace and love needs to be more prevalent and needs to permeate our society more than any other time. There's obviously still a great divide in this country, and there's obviously still a lot of people that are instilled and imbued with anger and with prejudice. And I think one of the things that as a nation and as a people of this nation that we have to ask ourselves is how can we remove that prejudice that is inherently instilled into so many of us. Because I'll tell you something, I don't believe anybody in this country is born a racist. I don't believe that anybody in this nation, is born with hate in their hearts. I think it's something that we gain, something that is passed on, and it's something that's passed on for generations. Parents that hate and hold on to anger will pass that hatred down onto their children, and it just begins a cycle. So I think we as a people need to start asking ourselves, it's one thing to say, don't be racist, no more police brutality, Black Lives Matter, and of course all of this is true, but we have to go deeper than that. We have to do our best to break the cycle, because it is a cycle. And if we can break it at some point, if we can reach somebody and basically say, you know what, your beliefs are a fallacy. It's wrong. You know, if that person can believe that it is wrong, and they stop teaching that to their children, that's a miracle, because that right there has broken generations of hatred and intolerance. So that's something that I think we all need to kind of start to do. And in a way, I think that that's why I'm making this video. In case you haven't noticed yet, this week we don't have a Shoot the Shit Saturday. We all were a little busy. We weren't able to get together. And I'm not putting this in its place, but it's just something that I wanted to give a message. I've always been a firm believer that if you can make a difference in at least one person's life, if you can leave a positive impact in at least one person's life, that's all that matters. That's You've made a difference. So if somehow, some way, even years from now, somebody watches this video and they can sort of reflect and think about the impact that their actions have had, and maybe think to themselves, I've been wrong all this time. It'll have been worth it. And I will say, and I'm not going to name any names, but one of the proudest moments of my life, a little bit of a story here for you. I remember there was a friend that I used to play World of Warcraft with, and I'm not going to call him a bigot. I'm not going to call him, a racist, but he definitely did not have a very high opinion of Hispanics. For anybody who does not know, and if it's not evident from the sound of my voice, I am of Hispanic descent. And he joined the same guild that I was in, and over time we became friends. We became rather good friends. And one of the proudest moments of my entire life is I remember we were in, back then it was Ventrilo. Nowadays we got Discord, but back then it was Ventrilo and TeamSpeak. And I remember we were talking in Ventrilo one day, and I think he said it as a passing comment, but to me it was so, it left such an impact on me. It really ingrained itself into my memory. He said, "You know what, Jesse, you've completely changed my outlook on Hispanics. You guys are great. I've been wrong all this time. Obviously I'm paraphrasing here, but those were, fairly close to his words. And when he said that to me, that was monumental. That was a sign that I had made a positive influence in somebody's life, and it was a historic occasion for me. And I still talk to this person from time to time. We have remained friends, but it was to the point that he actually, when there was a time that my situation in my house was a little unstable, he actually offered me a place to stay. So that just goes to show you that we can make a difference if each of us shows kindness instead of hatred. Even not knowing, you could definitely be making a difference in somebody's life. And just by that same token, I have another story on the opposite spectrum. When I was in high school, I was part of the speech and debate team, and I really enjoyed doing it. And I remember I was debating this guy from a rather a much more white collar school than I was. And needless to say, the gentleman was white, and we had a round, and it was clear during the debate round that I won. Everything that he had, I countered, and it was a very clear cut victory for myself. Now, the tradition with debate, whenever you finished, is when you exited the room, you would exit together, leaving the judges behind in the room to render the decision, make the notes and all that. And when the two contestants would exit the room, they would shake hands on the outside and say, good job, and I really like this, and I really like that, or whatever. And I remember this guy, he seemed very, very arrogant, but I had just finished beating him. And we stepped outside, And he took my hand the way you're supposed to. We shook hands, and I said, "Hey, that was a great round." And he goes, "Yeah, yeah." I didn't realize Spics were good for anything other than manual labor. That was almost 20 years ago, and to this day, that moment has just been carved. It's been etched into my memory and into my soul. I remember I stood there flabbergasted. My mouth fell agape, and he finished shaking my hand and just turned and walked away. I didn't even have the capacity to react with anger. People tell me I would have told him this. I would have said, "F you this and F you that." It wasn't even. I think for several moments I just stood there processing what I had just heard, just unable to believe that there could be somebody so just so full of that prejudice. I mean, it's one thing they could have said, what, your case sucked, and I should have won that or something, just addressing anything else. But he went right after my heritage, right after the color of my skin, and that's hatred, and that's what we need a lot less of. And by that same token, don't hate anybody. It's not okay to hate somebody no matter what the color of their skin is. It's not okay to hate somebody because they're white. It's not okay to hate somebody because they're black or brown or Asian. It's not okay to hate anybody. The hate is a powerful emotion, and it's something that we should not have for one another. I remember when Obama got elected president, and people somehow believed that this was going to end racism. And I remember one time, I was in college when he got elected, and I remember everybody was cheering. It was just pandemonium, it was a top story everywhere. Everybody was cheering, people were chanting Obama in the streets and stuff, and that was great to see. But I remember I never made a big fuss over it. And I remember somebody called me out on that. They said, why aren't you celebrating the fact that we now have our first black president? And I said to myself, because of the fact that everybody else is celebrating, that's why I'm not celebrating. They didn't understand what I mean, and what I mean is this: it, when it becomes business as usual, when having a Hispanic president, a black president, a woman president, when it's just the next elected official, and it doesn't matter whether they're black or they're brown or they're man or they're woman, when it doesn't matter if they're binary, I don't even know the terms, but if they're transgender, binary, when it doesn't matter anymore what type of person they are as far as the superficial characteristics, but rather what is inside them, how they are able to lead, and the type of person that they are, when that is the only thing that counts, and when it is no longer a big deal to anybody else, that's when it'll be a big deal to me. When I can look around and see that electing the first, Hispanic woman president, or the first, black transgender president or something, has become the norm, when it's just business as usual and nobody's celebrating anymore, when it's just the next elected official, that's when I will jump for joy. That's when I will have my own private celebration, because then and only then will I know that as a country we have truly grown. So in closing, I just want to say that just be good to each other. I've said it before, and that's the simplest message that I know to give, is be good to one another. Don't hate, love. Right now we are, as a nation, we are struggling, and we are definitely going through a very rough patch. And Obs will tell you, and Ring will tell you, we don't really like to discuss politics on this channel, and I don't believe that I'm making this political. I'm trying to stay away from the politics. I just want to give a message of peace and camaraderie, because I think we need it. In my eyes, this country, I will say this, and many may and probably will disagree with me, but in my eyes, this country is the greatest country in the world. And no, I don't mean that we're better than anybody else. I see this country as the greatest in the world the same way that a parent who sees their child out on the soccer field, even if their child is fumbling around, even if their child hasn't scored a single point and is just tripping all over themselves and just doing nothing, that child is going to be the pride and joy of the mother and father that's looking on. Because to them, that child is the greatest. That's the same type of pride and love that I feel for my country. I know that we're not the best in education or policy or politics or anything like that. I know that. But because of the fact that I have pride and what I believe to be patriotism in my heart, to me this country is the greatest in the world. We have to do our best to make it better. And again, if I've reached at least one person out there, if my words have, you know, permeated into you somehow and made you want to do better, you know, then I've done my job. I've always said that, you know, there's so many people in this world. If every one person did one extra good deed that they would normally do, imagine how many good deeds would be done, how many lives saved, and how much more love there would be. So that's my message. We here at Odds and Ends Gaming thank you, and we definitely, well, again, I don't want to speak for anybody else. I'm only speaking for myself. But I, Jesse, stand by the protesters, and I hope for solidarity and for peace for our future. God bless you, and take care.
I think America must see that riots do not develop out of thin air. Certain conditions continue to exist in our society, which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. But in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard. What is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice, equality, and humanity.